It is an honor to be here. Thank you, Leo, for your very kind introduction. I come to you as someone who lives near the nation's capital, but I come to you as someone who was born in Buffalo, New York. And I'm here to say to all of you Toronto Maple Leafs fans, congratulations to my friends north of the border. I just lost a bet. I bet my Toronto Maple Leafs fans which team would end their futility sooner, the Buffalo Sabres or the Toronto Maple Leafs. And you have succeeded in ending that futility. In Buffalo, our motto is false hope is better than no hope at all. And so my Buffalo Bills are undefeated. And I come to you as perhaps the only speaker today who's been to a Buffalo Bills game and a Hamilton Tiger Cats game. So there you go. And so I want to say thank you. And I want to start out by saying a few words about Leo Gerard. Because I believe to my core, and I am certain that I speak for a guy named Barack Obama in saying the following to you. Leo Gerard is a titan in the labor movement. Period. Exclamation point. That's what he is, folks. I can tell you as someone who had the privilege of a lifetime working under President Obama and Vice President Biden's leadership, that when you looked at and asked about a situation that was a tough labor situation, and you asked the question, who should I talk to? He always wanted to know, what does Leo Gerard think? Because he understood, Leo, your leadership. He understood your vision. He understood everything that you brought to the table because you wear your values on your sleeve. You brought those values into the workplace, and those values are all about making sure that we all succeed in this country and our friends north of the border. So I want to say again, Leo, thank you for your friendship. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your advice. Thank you for kicking us in the butt from time to time, because that's an important part of friendship, is having tough conversations, and I can assure you that those happen from time to time, and you made me a better labor secretary. You know, thank you. You know, I had a set of prepared remarks with me, and I was sitting listening to the debate that you just completed, and I want to tell you that you inspired me. And I cannot tell you, the world craves for what that sign is right now, the power of unity, Leo. And rather than read from my prepared remarks, I just want to frankly speak to you from the heart. I want to speak to you, first of all, as someone who feels very lucky because I am preceding Reverend Barber as opposed to following Reverend Barber. And any of you who know Reverend Barber will understand what I say after he speaks. He is one of the most inspirational people I have ever met. But you know what, folks? I want to tell you why I'm so excited to be here. Because I had the privilege of growing up in Buffalo, New York. I'm what they call Buffalo-Minican. My folks emigrated from the Dominican Republic to Buffalo, New York. They came there because of the similarities in the weather. And actually, you know, my folks were the quintessential immigrant story. They had to leave the country to flee a terrible dictator. They came to the United States. The United States gave my family opportunity, and my parents taught me, to whom much is given, much is expected. I was 12 years old when my dad passed away, and my surrogate father was a Teamster. He had about a 9th or 10th grade education. He was the wisest person I ever met in my life. And he made me understand, actually, I believe there's often an inverse correlation between the number of years that you go to school and your wisdom. Because he was the wisest person I've ever met. My father died June 29, 1974. My surrogate father died June 29, 2009. And his wife, my surrogate mother, died June 29, 2013. You'll never be able to convince me that that was a coincidence. And I bring him up because, you know what? He taught me the importance of the labor movement as a Teamster. I understand growing up in Buffalo, I had a lot of friends whose dads worked at Republic Steel or Bethlehem Steel or the stamping plant. And I saw how you could thrive in the 1960s and 1970s, punch your ticket to the middle class, and then I saw what happened to my surrogate father when he lost his job, and he eventually lost his home, and he lost his dignity. But he was so stoic, and but for his union, he would have lost every single thing. His union enabled him to survive. And that is why I learned that when unions succeed, America succeeds. When unions succeed, the middle class succeeds. And you know what, folks? I had the privilege of working for a guy in the United States Senate named Ted Kennedy. And Ted Kennedy taught me firsthand that the most important force that brought middle-class prosperity to this nation was collective bargaining, period. That was the most important force. You look at America's greatest generation. They fought with distinction in World War II. They came back to America, and many of those leaders became the leaders of the union movement. And we saw for decades, as wages rose, prosperity rose, and the middle class rose. And we saw the power of union density and collective bargaining and bringing about an America and a Canada that worked for everyone, where we had shared prosperity. But then we started to see that prosperity fray. And here we are. I had the privilege of working for President Obama. And when I look at where we were and where we are now and where we need to go, President Obama inherited the worst recession of our lifetime. And it's important to remember where we were, and important to reflect on where we are, and important to reflect on where we need to go. Because in 2009, before this president, we lost 2.2 million jobs in those 3 months. The economy was hemorrhaging. The auto industry was on life support. And there were many Republicans who said, pull the plug. But Barack Obama and Joe Biden said, never bet against the American worker. And as a result of those investments, and they are investments, I will never bet against the American worker. As a result of those investments, we were able to save over 1 million jobs. I own 2 cars that are both made by Ford. I've been able to visit both plants. The Louisville plant, where my Ford Escape was made. Back in 2008, they were down to about 800 jobs. But labor and management came together around a plan of shared sacrifice that would lead to shared prosperity. And now there are over 4,000 people in that plant. And that, not to mention the supply chain. That's what happens when we're all in this together, my friends. And so we've made tremendous progress. And thanks to Leo's help, we made progress in other areas, because I firmly believe that nobody who goes to work in the morning should ever have to come home sick at night. And in the United States, in 1936, Frances Perkins held a conference in which she talked about the critical dangers of silica dust. 1936, my friends. And it took until 2015 for the science to catch up to the politics. And I was very proud to lead that effort to make sure that everybody who goes to work in an environment that is safe and sound. Whether you're a miner, whether you're working in a foundry, everywhere you work, you should go to work safe and sound. And we wouldn't have gotten there but for the United Steelworkers, because there were very entrenched interests who didn't want to see this happen. And so I'm here to say thank you for that. Thank you for leading the effort, because you know what? When we are united, good things happen to good people. But you know what, folks? We have a lot more work to do. There's no doubt about it. We made a lot of progress under President Obama. We climbed out of the worst recession in our lifetime. But when you see the realities, we have more work to do. I'm proud of the fact that, thanks to Leo Gerard, we did more dumping cases than had ever been done under President Obama's leadership. Because you pushed us, Leo. You gave us the evidence. But you know what, folks? We did those, and we did those with pride. But I have to tell you, I know that that was not enough. Because when you look at the facts, When you see the unlevel playing field, when you see the cheating, whether it's tires, whether it's steel, you look at the facts and figures and they're overwhelming. We used to produce 120 to 135 million tons of steel 10 or 15 years ago, and now we're down to 85 million tons. During the same period, China went from a production of 500 million tons a year to about 1.2 billion tons a year. So these countries that are cheating are not only exporting their product unfairly to the United States, but they're exporting their unemployment to the United States as well. And that ain't fair, my friends. That isn't fair. The production, this is amazing, and Leo was the one who educated me more than anyone. The production, the surplus, the overcapacity in China is more than the combined production of the US, Canada, Europe, and Japan combined. We have to keep fighting. And what I learned, folks, from having a front row seat is part of the problem with our trade laws is that you've got to have the train wreck before you can go into court and win. And by the time you win, it's a Pyrrhic victory. That ain't fair, and that's why we need to change those laws. We need to make sure there's a level playing field for all of you. And we have so much work to do. And that is why, one reason, but not the only reason, why we have an America that's out of balance. We've made a lot of progress, but America only works at its best when we all share in that prosperity. Our economy is out of balance here in the United States and elsewhere. When the 20 wealthiest people have a combined wealth that's equal to the 150 million people at the bottom of the economic ladder, that's an America that's out of balance. When you have a Wall Street bonus pool, as there was in 2014, that was $28.5 billion with a B dollars, which is roughly twice as much as the combined income of all full-time federal minimum wage workers in the United States, that's an economy that's out of balance. That's an economy that needs to be fixed. That's an economy that needs to work for everyone. And that is the unfinished business. And people often ask me, my friends, what do you miss the most about being labor secretary? Well, I'll tell you, my friends, what I miss the most is helping people at scale. It's the definition of a good week. When I can go home and tell my children, I help tens of millions of workers breathe clean air in the workplace. I help 2 million home health workers, mostly women of color, on food stamps, get access to basic minimum wage and overtime protections. I helped tens of millions of working Americans saving for retirement to make sure they can keep their savings. That's the definition of a good week. But we're not there now. And I understand that we are in a divided nation. And I understand that in this election, many people who voted in the past for Barack Obama or other Democrats decided to vote differently. And I respect those choices. And I ran for the chair of the Democratic National Committee because I want to make sure we help people at scale. I firmly believe that when Democrats win elections, good things happen to good people. And I am seeing now that when Democrats lose elections, some bad things can happen to good people. And I am here to say, I understand the work we have ahead as Democrats. We have to earn your trust. And the best way to earn your trust is to lead with our values. So I want to tell you what my values are and the values of the Democratic Party are. We believe that health care is a right, not a privilege, as Democrats. We believe that no one who works a full-time job in the United States, Canada, or anywhere else should have to live in poverty. We believe that our environment and our workplaces can coexist. And it's a false choice to say that you must either take care of your environment or take care of your workforce. We can do both. We must do both. The Blue-Green Alliance is seeking to do both. And thank you, Leo, for your leadership in that Blue-Green Alliance. We believe that every person in every zip code is gifted and talented. And when we draw out those gifts and talents, we believe that everybody succeeds. We believe that in order for everyone to succeed in this country, we must absolutely increase the power of the labor movement. Right now, every day, here in America, up in Canada, because you know what, folks, as I said before, when the labor movement succeeds, the middle class succeeds. That's what we have to do. And you know what, folks? Last week, there was a nominee for the Supreme Court who, as of today, is now the 9th Justice. I understand the yearning for change that many who voted for this president sought. And I respect your vote. And I will tell you, folks, this justice is poised to cast the 5th vote to make it next to impossible for public sector labor unions to organize. I'll tell you why I have confidence of that, regrettably, because I went to the Supreme Court last January when there was a case before the court. And but for the death of Justice Scalia, that decision would have already been made. And so when we think about our choices, when we think about the consequences, we must look at the consequences through the lens of the most important tool available to the labor movement and to the middle class, and that is collective bargaining. And we must continue to understand that and fight for it. You look at what's happening in states across the United States, most recently Iowa. You see Republican governors passing these right to work for less laws, making it harder for unions to organize. Our values as a Democratic Party, we support the right to organize, and we must oppose the right to work for less laws. We must continue that work. We must continue, as we talk about infrastructure, to ensure that infrastructure is done right, because infrastructure done right is good for the middle class. It's good for you, because infrastructure done right means that you earn a middle class wage. Infrastructure done right means that we have project labor agreements. Project labor agreements are win-win solutions for workers, for employers, and for communities. But again, the Vice President of the United States, when he was the governor of Indiana, he repealed the prevailing wage laws. They have expressed repeatedly, my friends, their opposition to project labor agreements. Infrastructure done right is win-win. Infrastructure done wrong is a tax credit for Wall Street investors. And we must work together to show the reality of where we are. We must work together to make sure we're putting our values into action. That's why I ran for this job. I ran for this job, folks, because public service is about people. It's about people like Alan White, a United Steelworker member from Buffalo, New York, whom I met when I was on the job. Alan and I are about the same age. And Alan went to work at a foundry in Buffalo. And Alan has a grandson. And what Alan told me is, my biggest sadness in life is I'm not going to be there to watch my grandkid grow up, because Alan contracted silicosis in the workplace. That was preventable. That was preventable, but that was not prevented because for all too many years there was not the political will to take on the industry. That's what we did. That's what I did. That's what Leo helped us to do, was to take on these entrenched interests. There is too much power in the United States that are in the hands of too few people. That is why we feel that angst. And that angst was felt at the ballot box. I get it, my friends. I get it clearly. And my goal as the head of the Democratic Party is to put our values into action. That is why we worked hard to oppose the repeal of the Affordable Care Act, because you know what? The repeal of the Affordable Care Act was simply a tax break for wealthy people and an age tax on people who were 50 to 65 years old. And we were able to defeat it. Why? Because of the power of unity. That was the power that enabled us to defeat the efforts to undermine the Affordable Care Act. We have more work to do. We have more work to do as a party. But I will tell you, folks, and I leave you with this. Folks, we need you to get into the arena and run for office. I need your help. The Democratic Party, as Leo said earlier on, our mission is to help elect Democrats from the school board to the Senate. And I'm telling you, why are these right-to-work laws being passed in states across this country? Why is it that in the United States Congress, if you want to help a labor union, you can't do it right now because you don't have the votes? Because all too many decisions are made and being made without members of the labor movement in the room. I ran for office in local government back in 2002 because I wanted to make sure that Latinos had a voice. I wanted to make sure that union members had a voice. And I felt that I could add to that. I didn't get rich. Or if you do get rich in this line of work, you probably ought to be looked at by a prosecutor. But I'll tell you, folks, the non-monetary rewards are priceless. We need you to be in the game. We need you to be running for office here and north of the border. Why? Because, folks, income inequality is the abiding issue of our time. And we need your membership to be in the room, to stand up for the Alan Whites of the world, to stand up for your nurses who are here, to stand up for your foundry workers, to stand up for your Harley workers, to stand up for all of your workers and say, you know what? We need a voice at the table, because I've learned the hard way, folks. When you're not at the table, you're all too frequently on the menu. And I don't want you to be on the menu. The Democratic Party doesn't want you on the menu. The Democratic Party wants to make sure that unions thrive. Union density in this United States is down in the low teens. And you know what, folks? We need to lift that. We need to bring back an era in which unions were at the table regularly. We can do that if we marshal the power of unity in this room and across the country. People are waking up, my friends, to say, this is not acceptable that we have such inequality, and we need to raise our voices. And so I'm here to tell you that the Democratic Party is going to do just that. We're going to work hard to earn your trust. And I understand why so many people were willing to take a chance on change. And I respect that. But I will tell you, the change I suspect you were looking for is not the change that I would observe you are getting. 2 hours into his administration, he made it harder for first-time home buyers to buy a home. 3 days later, he made it harder for people to save for retirement. Last week, we confirmed a nominee to the Supreme Court who is poised to make it even harder to organize. 3 examples of change that is not going to help our cause. And so that is why we will continue to fight, because I believe America is strongest when we are together. I believe that we are, as Bobby Kennedy said, we are a nation of strength. We are a nation of optimists. We are a nation of compassion. We are a nation that believes that every person in every zip code has the talent to succeed. And the mission of the Democratic Party is to draw out those gifts and talents. I come to you with unbridled optimism, and I know that may seem odd in a period in which it seems that every day we're at each other. But I come to you with that optimism because I have studied our nation's history. And there's a guy named Walter Isaacson, and I leave you with this story. He wrote a biography of a guy named Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein was a pretty smart guy, and he emigrated here from Germany. And he wrote a series of letters to his son in the 1950s, in the height of the McCarthy era. The McCarthy era was an era of fear in the United States. And his letters initially to his son said, "What is wrong with this country? What's going on? I see in McCarthy some of the same pathologies that made me flee Germany." And then a year or two later, Walter Isaacson talks about a series of letters that he writes to his son in the aftermath of Joe McCarthy's being censured by the United States Senate and reduced to the dustbin of history. And in his letters, he says to his son, "What a country! This is an amazing country. It has this gyroscope. And just when you think the gyroscope is spinning out of control, it rights itself." Well, my friends, the gyroscope is not a piece of technology. The gyroscope is what Barack Obama said a year and a half or so ago when he went to Selma, Alabama to mark the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. The gyroscope is that most important two-letter word in our United States Constitution, the word we. We the people, in order to form a more perfect union. When we marshal the collective power of we succeed. When we marshal the power of unity, the labor movement succeeds. When we marshal the power of unity, the environmental movement and the labor movement succeed together. When we marshal the power of unity, women succeed. When we marshal the power of unity, we combat discrimination. When we marshal the power of unity, we build a better nation, a fairer nation, a more just nation. And so let us marshal that power together. I come to you with humility, understanding that we must always earn your trust. And I come here determined to do just that. So I hope you'll never hesitate to give me your unvarnished feedback on what we need to do as Democrats. And I hope you will accept my challenge to run for office in your communities, because I am confident that in this room we have many, many Leo Gerards, people of incredible talent, incredible wisdom, incredible passion, and incredible compassion. People who will build an America, a Canada that will work for everyone. The arc of the moral universe is indeed long, and it indeed, as Dr. King said, bends toward justice, economic justice, justice for everyone. But it never bends on its own, my friends. Let's bend it together, and let's bend it in unity. Thank you very much.